Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is the inaugural day of our Paris International Infraweek, a complete week dedicated to the infrastructure financing. I am very happy to welcome Mr. Bruno Le Maire, French Minister of the Economy, Finance and Economic Recovery. Mr. Minister, thank you very much for having accepted once again to participate and for your strong support to consolidate the position of Paris as an international financial center. The floor is yours.
Monsieur le Président, cher Augustin, Monsieur l'ambassadeur, Mesdames, Messieurs, je suis très heureux de participer à cette 6e édition de l'Infraweek consacrée à la transition énergétique et climatique. Inutile de vous dire que c'est un sujet majeur, chacun le sait ici, chacun en a pris conscience au moins au cours de cet été, et cela fait partie des sujets de mobilisation totale de mon ministère, du ministère de l'économie et des finances. Nous devons changer de modèle économique. Changer de modèle économique pour aller vers un modèle décarboné, plus respectueux de l'environnement, plus respectueux du climat. Mais pour tout vous dire, une fois qu'on a dit ça, on n'a pas dit grand-chose. Parce que nous n'avons rien dit sur la méthode, rien dit sur le coût, rien dit sur le financement. Et je voudrais mettre en regard deux crises qui, d'une certaine façon, se percutent et doivent nous amener à trouver des solutions. D'un côté, la crise climatique, avec son lot d'incendies, de catastrophes naturelles, d'ouragans, de montée des mers, de déplacements de population, d'impact économique, d'impact social, d'impact géopolitique. Et puis de l'autre, la crise qui nous occupe 7 jours sur 7 avec le Président de la République, ce qui explique mon retard d'ailleurs ce matin, qui est la crise énergétique, la flambée des prix du gaz, la flambée des prix de l'électricité et le risque de voir un certain nombre d'entreprises en Europe et en France baisser leur production, voire se mettre au chômage partiel, voire fermer leurs portes, voire délocaliser. Donc nous devons impérativement à la fois apporter de l'énergie à ces entreprises et dans le même temps décarboner l'économie. Nous devons avoir un modèle économiquement soutenable et du point de vue environnemental qui accomplisse cette transition indispensable. Et c'est tout le défi que nous avons à mener. C'est trop facile de dire qu'on ne s'occupe que d'un défi et pas de l'autre. Car si vous ne vous occupez que d'un défi et pas de l'autre, vous serez rattrapé par le premier ou par le second. La première chose pour tenir ces deux fils ensemble, c'est d'abord de se fixer des objectifs qui soient clairs. L'Europe l'a fait, je crois, avec beaucoup de force. 50% de réduction des émissions en 2030 par rapport à 1990, c'est l'engagement Fit for 55, et neutralité carbone en 2050. Nous avons 4 millions de CO2 en moins par an entre 2012 et 2017, 8 millions entre 2017 et 2021, 16 millions entre 2022 et 2030. Donc il y a des chiffres, il y a un calendrier et il y a un engagement. Du point de vue national, je pense que nous avons pris aussi toute la mesure du sujet et pris les mesures nécessaires pour tenir ces engagements chiffrés dont je viens de parler. D'abord, nous nous sommes engagés pour produire plus d'électricité décarbonée en renforçant la filière nucléaire déjà unique au monde. J'entends les critiques sur le passé, je préfère regarder l'avenir et les décisions qui ont été annoncées par le Président de la République. C'est la première fois qu'un Président de la République, depuis plusieurs décennies, prend l'engagement de construire 6 nouveaux réacteurs nucléaires de type EPR2 et de lancer des études sur la construction de 8 EPR2 additionnels. Nous avons également décidé d'accélérer le développement des énergies renouvelables, l'installation du premier site éolien offshore, le doublement de la capacité éolienne terrestre et la multiplication par 10 de la puissance installée d'énergie solaire d'ici 2028. Au-delà de cette production, nous avons aussi pris des engagements pour décarboner nos industries. Et là aussi, le défi est considérable. Parce qu'il faut à la fois réindustrialiser et décarboner les industries que nous installons. Il faut être compétitif pour que les sites industriels s'ouvrent en France avec les emplois, avec les technologies, avec la valeur ajoutée qui va avec. Et il faut dans le même temps consacrer des dizaines de milliards d'euros à la décarbonation de cette industrie qui, je le rappelle, représente près de 20% des émissions françaises. Dans France 2030, je rappelle que nous allons consacrer près de 6 milliards d'euros à la décarbonation du mix énergétique. Le meilleur exemple, c'est celui d'ArcelorMittal et de ses hauts fourneaux de Dunkerque et de Fos-sur-Mer. Je recommande à chacun d'entre vous d'aller visiter ces installations parce que ça permet de prendre, au-delà des grands discours de salon, de prendre conscience physiquement, matériellement, de l'enjeu économique que cela représente de décarboner des sites qui font des centaines d'hectares, qui représentent des installations absolument considérables et donc des coûts considérables derrière. Nous avons également pris des mesures pour améliorer nos réseaux de transport. Je pense à ce qui a été fait sur les réseaux ferroviaires avec le développement du fret, mais également le canal Seine-Nord-Europe avec 5 milliards d'euros d'investissement qui reliera le bassin de la Seine au réseau fluvial du nord de l'Europe. L'Europe s'est également engagée aux côtés de la nation française et des autres nations. Dans le cadre du pacte vert pour l'Europe, un tiers des 1 800 milliards d'euros d'investissement du plan de relance Next Generation EU seront consacrés à la transition et à la décarbonation de l'économie. Nous avons également la taxonomie verte, nous avons le Global Gateway qui se donne pour objectif de mobiliser 300 milliards d'euros pour financer de nouvelles infrastructures. Donc nous avons aussi des décisions et des engagements européens qui sont forts. Maintenant, nous avons besoin, et c'est pour ça que je vous remercie de votre présence ici, de la mobilisation totale de l'écosystème financier. Quand on regarde au niveau mondial, les besoins en nouvelles infrastructures qui permettront de réduire les émissions de carbone liées au transport ou à l'industrie. Les besoins sont estimés à 450 milliards d'euros par an au niveau mondial. Ce sont donc des sommes absolument considérables. Inutile de vous dire que ce ne sont pas les financeurs publics et les budgets des États qui vont assumer seuls ces coûts. Ils n'en ont ni les moyens, ni l'opportunité à un moment où les tensions sur les marchés sont fortes, où les taux d'intérêt sont élevés et où l'endettement des États, je le rappelle, a explosé en raison de la pandémie, de la crise du Covid et des mesures nécessaires contre l'inflation. Donc nous allons avoir besoin d'un nouveau partenariat beaucoup plus ambitieux entre les financeurs publics et les financeurs privés, entre les États et les investisseurs. Et c'est la condition du succès de la lutte contre le réchauffement climatique. Tout ne peut pas reposer sur la puissance publique, tout ne peut pas reposer uniquement sur les forces privées non plus. Il faut que nous arrivions à bâtir un nouveau pacte entre les financeurs publics et les financeurs privés. Alors nous avons un certain nombre d'initiatives qui ont été lancées en la matière. Je voudrais en citer deux. Les principes du G20 pour les investissements dans des infrastructures de qualité. Je remercie l'ambassadeur indien de sa présence, car nos partenaires indiens ont pris la décision de poursuivre ce travail d'orientation stratégique et de remise à niveau. Je me rendrai à New Delhi dans quelques semaines pour en discuter avec nos partenaires indiens. Nous avons également une autre initiative lancée par le Premier ministre Modi lors du sommet Action Climat de l'ONU en 2019, la Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure, CRDI, qui a été lancée en 2019, qui vise à encourager la réalisation d'infrastructures résilientes aux catastrophes naturelles et aux aléas climatiques. Je voudrais saluer cette initiative du Premier ministre Modi. Nous avons eu l'occasion d'en parler avec le Président de la République et le Premier ministre Modi lors de sa visite à Paris. Et je voudrais confirmer à l'ambassadeur notre intention de soutenir cette coalition. La France, évidemment, souhaite se mettre au cœur de ces grandes transformations. D'abord, pour le faire, il faut qu'elle reste attractive. Attractive globalement et attractive plus particulièrement sur le financement des infrastructures. Nous avons réussi, grâce à vous tous ici, à devenir un écosystème particulièrement riche et attractif pour le financement des infrastructures avec des banques, des sociétés de gestion et des cabinets de gestion spécialisés. Nous avons également réuni de nouveaux acteurs, mobilisé davantage de fonds. Tout ça avance dans la bonne direction. C'est dans cette perspective, et sur la base de ces premiers résultats, que le président de la République a soutenu l'initiative Fast Infra, lancée lors du One Planet Summit qu'avait organisé précisément le président de la République il y a quelques mois. Qu'est-ce que c'est que Fast Infra? C'est d'abord un label qui va permettre de distinguer entre les infrastructures durables et celles qui ne le sont pas. Chacun sait qu'il existe partout dans le monde, en particulier dans les pays en développement, des besoins d'infrastructures qui sont considérables, je donnais le chiffre, qui suscitent parfois une convoitise économique considérable et où les marchés sont parfois gagnés par ceux qui offrent les solutions les plus rapides, les plus économiques et les moins favorables au climat. Je pense qu'il était absolument indispensable pour la construction de ponts, de routes, d'aéroports, cher Augustin, de tout type d'infrastructures, d'acheminement d'eau, de systèmes de dépollution, qu'il y ait un label de durabilité de ces infrastructures. Sans quoi les marchés seront systématiquement gagnés par ceux qui proposent le coût le moins élevé, le prix le plus faible, sans aucune considération pour l'impact écologique de ces infrastructures. Donc je crois profondément à ce label qui va permettre de valoriser des constructions selon les meilleurs standards environnementaux, sociaux, de résilience et de gouvernance. L'enjeu est économique, il est aussi très politique, parce que dans le fond, c'est la défense du modèle économique européen que nous voulons mettre en avant. Il s'agit d'expliquer que notre modèle, qui fait attention aux coûts financiers d'une infrastructure, mais également aux coûts sociaux, aux coûts environnementaux, est le bon modèle et qu'il a vocation donc à servir de référence à travers la planète. Cette référence, elle doit être ouverte. C'est pour ça que Fast Infra sera aussi une plateforme digitale de collaboration qui accompagnera les acteurs des infrastructures durables, notamment dans les pays en développement, dans la préparation, le financement et le déploiement de programmes à grande échelle. Il ne s'agit pas d'imposer, il s'agit de coopérer pour aboutir, au bout du compte, à une économie qui soit durable, dynamique, respectueuse de l'environnement. C'est pour toutes ces raisons que je suis fier et heureux de vous annoncer que l'association Fast Infra a fait le choix de s'établir à Paris. Je pense que c'est une belle victoire française et une belle victoire pour le développement durable et notre volonté de défendre un modèle de développement économique plus durable. Nous soutiendrons évidemment l'association pour qu'elle bénéficie du dynamisme de notre écosystème. Voilà les quelques éléments dont je voulais vous faire part ce matin, Monsieur le Président, cher Augustin, Monsieur l'Ambassadeur, en me réjouissant une fois encore de me rendre à Delhi dans quelques semaines. Je vous souhaite d'excellents travaux aujourd'hui. Faites preuve de volontarisme, faites preuve d'audace. La planète en a besoin, la France également. Merci à tous.
Merci, Monsieur le Ministre. Thank you, Mr. Minister, for this very strong introduction. The importance of the challenge in terms of financing needs, the necessity to mobilize private financing as well as public financing, and the way the French government is welcoming the development of Fast Infra, this new entity to develop sustainable infrastructure. Now I have the pleasure to introduce Augustin de Romanet, Chair Group ADP, Chairman of Paris EUROPLACE. Mr. President, Mr. Chairman, can you tell us something about the strategy of Paris in terms of infrastructure financing, the strengths of Paris and the opportunities offered to international investors? Augustin de Romanet.
Mr. Ambassador, Mrs. and Mr. President, all distinguished guests, dear friends, I'm very delighted to welcome you at this 5th edition of the Paris Infraweek. And I would like to thank also Minister Bruno Le Maire for hosting once again this international conference in Bercy. Thank you, Your Excellency, Mr. ASHRAF, Ambassador of India in France, for participating. I'm especially delighted that India is our guest of honor for this 2022 edition of the Paris Infra Week. This is the recognition of the major role this great country plays worldwide, but also of the strong relationship bounding together India and France. I can personally testify about the importance of this deep relationship. As you know, Groupe ADP decided in 2020 to make its biggest investment abroad ever with the acquisition of a 1.2 billion participation with a 49% stake in the first Indian airport group, whose name is GMR. It's a key world-class infra player operating Delhi, Hyderabad, and in the future, Bhogapuram, Goa, and Nagpur airports. And I'm always amazed by the dynamism, optimism, and entrepreneurship spirit steaming everywhere in the country. I told to the ambassador a few minutes ago that the first word you hear when you go in India is leap. There is leap everywhere. Digital leap, infra leap, everything is leaping. And so I'm a first-hand witness as an infra operator of the challenge lying ahead in India like everywhere else. How to grow, develop, and transform ourselves while addressing the urgent requirement to dramatically lower down the carbon footprint of our societies. So this 2022 edition on the theme Infra to drive the great transformation takes place in a context characterized by global geopolitical tensions. This context puts infra at the heart of the solution of this crisis. That is why this new edition is dedicated to analyzing solutions and discussions how investment in infra will play a critical role in addressing both structural and conjunctural issues. So I will be very short because everybody knows them. First, structural issues. Climate disruption, the quality of infra and therefore investment in its modernization and digitalization. Third, it's an important way and vector for achieving United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And four, for emerging countries especially, shaken by the COVID crisis, the need to develop effective financing tools combining public and private financing and multilateral also. Also, conjunctural issues. The current geopolitical, economic, and energy context give infra an even more strategic role as a response to the new challenges. First, with the key issue of the energy autonomy. Second, the context of high inflation generated by the price of energy and the disruptions of the global supply chains. So, investment efforts must now focus on transforming energy and industrial infra to make them more greener, more sober, and more efficient. Third, with the rising interest rates increasing, we have the problem of the cost of financing. All these transformations and new challenges will be discussed in this week in a global perspective by our 200 expert speakers in the framework of 50 roundtables and side events organized during this 2022 Paris Infra Week. So, in this context, our key issues are how to mitigate the impact of macroeconomic imbalances, how to mobilize private investment, as the ministers just said, and how to pursue our commitment towards a net zero economy. The French infra market players are very dynamic and well positioned thanks to three main factors. First one, a large base of French industrial companies. Then, 4 French banks are among the top 10 mandated and lead arrangers in the world. And we have also a big ecosystem of infrastructure funds in France. They manage more than 100 billion euros under their authority. And a third point is the fact that the French infra funds are also innovative, as testified recently by the launch of the High24 platform, an initiative launched by French funds to mobilize investment to support hydrogen projects. So to tackle these new issues, Paris EUROPLACE will accelerate its initiatives to support these developments with 5 objectives. First, to analyze the quantitative and qualitative evolution of this huge market. Second, to help clarifying and streamlining the French pipeline of projects. Third, to enhance the capacities of Paris Financial Center to attract international infra funds, as well as arrangers and consulting advisory companies. Fourth, assist emerging countries with institutional enabling, capacity building, and project planning, which are still crucial. For this specific topic, Paris EUROPLACE has launched a new capacity building program with IFC World Bank, addressed to mid-career professionals from public sector from emerging countries. This program is an accredited 8-month graduate level program, reaching financial professionals across 25 emerging countries. And we also contribute more proactively to the G20 and international works and developments. That's why Paris EUROPLACE and the French Treasury support today the announcement that Bruno Le Maire has just made, which is the launching of the new initiative Fast Infra, which, in cooperation also with Singapore, aims to labelize the international sustainable infra projects. And we are more than happy to welcome the Fast Infra headquarters in Paris. And I think that I can also announce you that Fast Infra will be located in the Palais Brongniart, just nearby Paris EUROPLACE. And to conclude, I would say that the Indonesian G20 presidency has defined an ambitious agenda on infra in line with the Paris Infraweek priorities and agenda, starting by reaffirming the importance of the deployment of QII principles and the definition of clear indicators on the support of the development of sustainable infra investment, social inclusion, post-pandemic transformative infra, on digital infra and infratech. So, to conclude, I would like to welcome the second edition of the Infra Next Gen, the awards for young infra professionals of the Paris Financial Center, launched in partnership with Infravenir. So, thanks again to all of you, and I would like to give the floor to His Excellency Mr. Jawed Ashraf, Ambassador of India to France. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Mr. Augustin de Romanet, Chairman Paris EUROPLACE and Chairman of a company that is a great partner of India in the infrastructure sector. You've made a very wise choice, I must say, including in the airports that you are now an equal partner in. It's a real pleasure and a real honor for us to be the country of honor at the Paris Infra Week, and it's a real privilege to follow Minister Bruno Le Maire in speaking to you at the inaugural session. I think it reflects two very important features. One, that it reflects the strength of India-France strategic partnership, which encompasses every dimension of our national endeavor, from economy to security to education to culture, and in which the French businesses have been playing a very important role, particularly in the infrastructure sector, right from the time we began our journey as an independent nation 75 years ago. And the second is that India today is the new frontier of infrastructure, both because of the needs and the aspirations of a nation of 1.4 billion people, now moving rapidly on the path of growth, but also because of the geopolitics, which are now affecting economic choices and are raising new questions of sovereignty, strategic autonomy, and resilience. There is also the larger question of climate change, and the crisis is no longer an abstract science, but a lived reality that we saw this summer across the world. But we know from various studies that infrastructure influences about 92% of the Sustainable Development Goals, but is also responsible for 80% of the greenhouse gas emissions, placing for the world the extraordinary dilemma of ensuring that prosperity goes hand in hand with protection of the planet. And I think it is no longer a trade-off, but something that has to be combined together. So for India, going forward, there are 4 objectives that infrastructure must fulfill. One, of course, is that it must support our aspiration of achieving growth rates on a long-term basis of 8% a year, but also use infrastructure for inclusion and empowerment of people. The second, of course, is to ensure that this future is sustainable and climate resilient. The third is that we reduce our vulnerabilities, increase our resilience, strengthen our strategic autonomy and sovereignty in every sense of the word, which, again, the past 2 years of the pandemic and the recent crisis have demonstrated is critical for all countries. And finally, use the power of digitalization to achieve these 3 objectives, but also use digitalization for mainstreaming the people and empowering our people and achieving the speed and scale of economic progress that is perhaps was unprecedented or unthinkable before the digital age dawned upon us. As you're all familiar, in the course of the past 2 years, we've experienced pandemic, but we've recovered well. The last quarter, we experienced a growth rate of 13.1%. We should end the year, according to IMF, despite the current Ukraine conflict, at 7.4 to 7.5% a year. The recovery has in large part been because of enhanced government spending on infrastructure, which saw a growth rate of 35% over the last 2 years. But more broadly, if anyone who has followed the India story would have been seeing the scale and the speed at which infrastructure has been growing, whether it is adding nearly 40 kilometers of expressways every day, doubling the allocations on railways, 6 new mega ports, 18 new greenfield airports, 25 million housing units for the rural poor, 550,000 kilometers of optic fiber cable network laid in just the last 4 to 5 years. It is also in the energy sector where we have doubled our capacity of power generation over the course of the past 10 years. The story continues. So we have also added about 111 new waterways that have been identified, something that we had ignored for the past 50 to 60 years. There is also the other side, the social inclusion side, where we've been able to build 116 million toilets to ensure that every person has access to modern sanitation facility, where we've added 25 million, as I said, houses for the rural poor, and where in the course of the past 3 years, we've provided potable water connection to 62 million households. We have increased the potable water connection from an abysmal 16% of the households to now 51%, and India has 191 million households, so that's quite a scale to achieve. But when we look to the future, we recognize that this is not quite enough. We have been investing at the rate of at the public spending, about $100 billion to $125 billion in infrastructure. That's about 5 to 6% of the GDP has been the long-term trend in infrastructure spending. But when we look to the future, we need to raise it to about 9 to 10% of the GDP. And therefore, we have a plan to invest about $1.5 trillion over the next 5 years in order to achieve the growth rates that we want. $1.5 trillion. But it is quite clear that it isn't just going to be the government that will be able to meet that level of expenditure. It has to be in partnership with private sector, with financial institutions. And therefore, we have unleashed a wide range of schemes to enable that. One, of course, is an excellent public-private partnership model. As many of you know, India has the second largest number of public-private partnership projects in the developing world and will soon be the largest. We have created a national infrastructure pipeline of $1.5 trillion, which has very specific identified infrastructure projects, mostly de-risked already. We have created a national monetization pipeline in order to monetize brownfield projects and unlock both the potential of the projects, but also recycle the funds to invest in new projects. We've started viability gap funding for up to 20% in terms of grant assistance. We've set up new institutions like National Infrastructure Investment Fund and the Development Financial Institution. But we're also working on strengthening our long-term debt market, which has hitherto been not very strong in India, and have introduced new instruments like REITs, InvITs, and infrastructure debt funds with liberal tax regimes. And it is also now a sector which is almost entirely open to foreign direct investment up to 100%, and has extremely, extremely liberal tax regimes, nearly 100% tax exemption for investments by sovereign wealth funds and specified financial institutions within a narrow window of the next 4 to 5 years. And this is something which people need to take advantage of. But in order to make it simpler to implement infrastructure projects, we've also started what is called the Gati Shakti scheme, which Prime Minister launched in October last year. Gati is speed, Shakti is power, the power of speed. And the central purpose of this is to make sure that we create a common digital platform on which 16 ministries of government of India and all the state governments can operate in a seamless manner. And those who implement infrastructure projects know how annoying it is to work across different ministries and different governments. So this is a very important scheme to make it easy and quick to implement infrastructure projects. And finally, we have just launched the National Logistics Policy, which seeks to lower the logistics costs in India from about 14 to 15% to about 8% over the next 6 to 7 years by 2030. This is a very important new initiative for a number of reasons I'll come to. But let me focus a little bit on the clean energy side, which is a very important area. Now, we are the only G20 country, and I say this with confidence, that is more than on its meeting its Paris commitments, the COP21 commitments. Today, 41.8% of our energy is from non-fossil fuels. And that is, of course, includes hydro projects, but it is largely because of the surge in tide of solar and wind power, which rose from almost negligible levels just 7 to 8 years ago to now about 115 gigawatts of solar and electric power in India, 115 gigawatts. By 2024, 2025, this is going to go up to 225 gigawatts with an investment of $150 billion. Our new commitments made at Glasgow, of course, is that we will have 500 gigawatts of renewable energy by 2030. We will reduce carbon emission by 1 billion tons and reduce the carbon intensity of our economy by 45% over the 2005 level, and we will achieve net zero by 2070. Quite an ambitious commitment for a developing country with still low per capita consumptions of energy. The supply side is one side. Of course, we have got a new national hydrogen mission where we intend to build, to have a capacity of 5 million tons of clean hydrogen by 2030. And EDF of France is going to be an important partner in that, just as many of the other institutions, and so will Total, which has just signed an agreement with Adani Group in India for massive investments in hydrogen. Nuclear is an important part of our energy future, and here again, EDF will be an important partner in that endeavor as we seek to build a 10,000 megawatt EPR, with 6 EPR reactors in India in the near future. But it is also on the demand side that we have instituted measures to ensure that industry, transportation, especially railways, road, and cars, and also buildings and industry transition towards use of clean energy. And so we've set targets for hydrogen usage by the most energy-intensive industries. We've got programs with liberal incentives for making storage batteries and for accelerating the introduction of electric vehicles. We are seeing a growth rate of 30 to 35%. And next year, we will now launch our first hydrogen-based train. Hopefully, it will be a success and pave the future for heavy haulage being based on hydrogen. So this is the sort of a transition from, on the supply side, enhancing clean energy, on the demand side, ensuring that industries, buildings, households, mobility all transition towards clean energy. And by the way, we're also building 50 metros to move mass transit away from roads onto the rails. And a part of this, of course, is financing. Every year, we are doing about $45 to $50 billion of green financing, but I think the need is for more than $100 billion, and that is where international partnerships will become critical, and France and Europe will be an important partner in that endeavor. Digitalization, everyone's heard about the Indian digital story. We've created a public digital infrastructure which is open, inclusive, democratic, free, not owned by big tech or owned by the state. And that has been possible because we've systematically pursued, on the basis of 1.3 billion biometric identity, open source platforms which anyone can use and create and innovate solutions. That is the reason why today we are the world's largest digital payment system. We've added 450 million bank accounts. We have transferred $300 billion of direct benefit transfer in terms of welfare schemes. So today you have about 6.5 billion transactions a month using digital payments. And this is also the reason why we were able to deliver 2.4 billion doses of COVID vaccines and provide free food to 800 million people over 2 years during COVID using digital, open source digital platforms which we've created. This is a huge revolution, and today we are speaking to France and Europe and ensuring that we can build similar protocols so that the public digital infrastructure remains what it is, public and not in the hands of a few, just as we have today built an open source, open digital e-commerce platform on which anyone can ride without having to go by the whims of some of the big tech owners. But there is something. 2 days ago, we launched our 5G network, and by early 2024, we hope to cover the entire country with 5G network and make it affordable. As many of you know, India today has the highest digital data consumption of about 14.1 GB per person per month, but also one of the lowest priced data in the world. So this is the way it is changing. And now we are also going to be launching semiconductor manufacturing in India. There are at least 3 projects which will ensure that we have not just public digital infrastructure, but also the supply chain resilience in the hardware sector. And we are now going to be working towards building our own 6G platforms and 6G networks. Much of what we have done in 5G in terms of software and integration has largely been done indigenously, but we hope that in 6G we can become independent. That is also so important today in creating a resilient industry and a sovereign system of infrastructure. And finally, therefore, in the manufacturing sector, we have launched the performance-linked initiatives that cover 13 sectors and a number of industrial parks, including 38 electronics industrial parks, 2 defense industrial corridors, and 11 industrial corridors, 197 food parks, and so on and so forth. And the purpose is, once again, to tap into the geopolitical changes that are taking place and accelerate our own domestic industrialization and become an integral part of the global supply chain, and in which infrastructure expansion, both digital and physical, and clean energy, all three will play a very important role. And let me conclude by saying that France is and will remain a very strong partner for us. Every sector of our infrastructure, we see a very strong French presence. And as we look to the future, it isn't just about clean energy, it isn't just about the hard infrastructure or about what we are doing together. It is also about what we can do together for the rest of the world. And in the Indo-Pacific region, we are already working in a number of ways. We are the co-founders of the International Solar Alliance, which now has 107 countries. We are partners in the Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure. We are working together in Prime Minister Modi's initiative for One Sun, One World, One Grid, in which EDF is playing a very important role in examining the technical feasibility of implementing this. And we are working together also on connectivity projects in Indo-Pacific region, which offer countries sovereign choices and create infrastructure which are sustainable both on maritime and land. And as I said, India is now totally open for investments. Paris is going to emerge as an important center for ideating and innovating on infrastructure financing, which will be sustainable. And I must say that in this context, you'd be happy to know that one of our asset management companies has relocated from London to Paris, which is a sign of the emerging attractiveness of Paris as a center for both business as also of ideas and innovation. And I think together, India and France, when we look at our strategic goals that Prime Minister and President Macron have said, helping a world achieve a more sustainable future in a prosperous future is an important part of that objective. So I'd like to thank, again, the Paris Infra Week for taking India as the country of the honor. And I think this will be a catalyst and a platform for much deeper cooperation between our two countries and between India and Europe to help build a truly multipolar and peaceful world for the future. Thank you very much for your patience and understanding. Thank you.